we now focus in such a narrow way as we look at somebody's life.
Yes.
And I mentioned in my introduction that we've got to the situation where somebody who really did turn the tide of history is adjudged on one narrow criteria. Did he support slavery or not? And we don't even know the answer to that question.
Well, that's what, when we talk about the current movement, or the woke movement, whatever we want to call it, it is a kind of moral puritanism. Certainly it is a purity culture, as in if there is anyone about something that is identifiably problematic, to use their parlance, then that is sufficient to have them cancelled, to have them removed, or to say that they have no value whatsoever. Of course, with any historical figure, or indeed with any human being who has ever lived or is alive today, the idea that they could be morally pure, could have no moral ambiguity about them whatsoever, and could not be faulted if you really wanted to, is a nonsense. So they have to be very careful, these activists, about what they're doing here, because they're assuming that it's possible for a human being to have no flaw. And as Professor Toombs was saying, you know, when these statues were erected, a lot of the time it was to celebrate a particular point. It wasn't to celebrate the worst aspect of that character. It was to commemorate something that they did, maybe, or a specific... I mean, take the Cecil Rhodes statue at Oriel College, Oxford. This was nothing to do with his involvement in the slave trade. The statue was put up because of his donation to the university, which still lasts today in the Rhodes Scholarship. So, you know, it's interesting that they want to reduce it. And I think a lot of it comes out of historical illiteracy. You know, it's very easy to cast judgment on figures from the past. And what's particularly galling about that is you know full well that the kind of activists who are doing this, had they been raised in the colonial era, with a certain affluent background, they would be the first to support slavery, because they're not free thinkers, these people. They go with the herd, and in order to live in the time when slavery was normalised and to think this is actually a great moral, this is a wrong thing to do, you'd have to be quite a creative thinker, and they're not that. So I think they should be very careful. And I also think there's a real arrogance about this idea that, you know, human history has just been a litany of evil and power, you know, people imposing their power on other groups. And then all of a sudden we've reached this point, and this group of activists, this group of people, this ideology, they've got the truth. They know that they are right, and they can wipe out elements of history that they find unpalatable.
And, you know, Andrew, it's the means they express their truth by as well, which, even on a sort of aesthetic level, are pretty foul. I mean, I know we haven't got exactly the pictures that I've been looking at today, but if you look at Goldsmith College in Deptford, in South East London, formerly in days gone by a sort of naval centre around that area, around the Thames, and you've got statues of Drake, and there's a statue of Nelson, and it's been beautifully, painstakingly carved by real craftsmen. And the toil would have taken a long, long time. And somebody's just thrown red paint at it.
Yes.
In a desultory way.
Yeah. This is always the problem with iconoclasm, isn't it? Is that inevitably it involves... I mean, if you think even of the attacks on the Buddhist statues by...
and that's a big claim.
Yeah, well, no, I'm not making that they're the same. But the idea that something so magnificent, something that has been built and laboured over so painstakingly, can just be destroyed in an instant. And that's why we're troubled by it when it happens. And, of course, iconoclasm has happened. I mean, I know Mary Beard has talked recently about how, well, the toppling of statues is part of history. Sometimes it happens. She even cited an example of when a new emperor in Rome would come to power. They would just sometimes even change the face of the existing statue so it matched the new one. So there is an argument to be made that actually this is an aspect of history. I think what's troubling about the current manifestation of this kind of iconoclasm is that it comes out of an ill-informed position. It comes out of a kind of an emotional knee-jerk reaction. It doesn't take into account nuance. It wants to reduce history to something very simple and binary and basic, and therefore it ought to be resisted. But like you say, it's a good job, isn't it, that the column is so high in Trafalgar Square, and that they actually, you know, they're too lazy really to get up there, I think.